Okay, again, this is the next installment in what I call the Masterpiece Theater segment of title company and closing attorney tips and strategies to make your closing perfect or just as close to perfect as we can make it. We've already talked about cash to close. That's important. Let's talk about remote closings. I have to say, so many people are leaving this area, New England, for the Carolinas, Florida, and elsewhere. So more than ever, we have a situation where people are selling a property. They are not moving down the street or across town. They are moving out of the region. And in some cases, they've already moved out of the region. And all of these videos are based upon anecdotes and things that I'm seeing more often, more and more often, too often. I'm seeing scenarios where people, sellers, list, fly away to a different place, and then find a buyer and close, and then realize or are informed that there are some complications associated with not physically being here for the closing. And then there's the eruption and the finger pointing and all what breaks loose. And I feel like all of that could be eliminated, or at least we could take some of the stress out of it if people just had more information and more knowledge. So let's talk about, you own a piece of property, and this is for sellers. You own a piece of property and you're going to put it on the market and you're going to sell it. But before you close or after you list, you need to move to where you're going, which is North Carolina, South Carolina, doesn't matter. What you need to understand, and what I would recommend that you do, is I recommend that you sign a power of attorney prior to leaving so that somebody is authorized to sign documents for you, whether it be a purchase and sales agreement or closing documents. And by the way, the single most important document that you will sign as the seller of real estate anywhere is the deed. And the deed is a document that only you can sign. So if you are selling property in New Hampshire, but are moving to North Carolina, or you've already moved to North Carolina, please understand, you will need to sign a deed. If you can't come back to this jurisdiction and sign it here, that's okay. But you'll have to sign it wherever you are in the presence of a notary, and you'll have to return that original deed to the closing attorney or title company. So a couple things that we can talk about. Let's also talk about leaving the country, because we're seeing that a lot too. And I've seen files where people will list, fly to a totally different country, and then a buyer comes along to buy their property, and they're wondering, okay, how do I sign all of my documents in South Korea? Well, it can be done, but there's nothing easy about it. You'll have to sign those documents at a consular office or at an embassy to get a proper notarization. If you're thinking that, well, I can close remotely, right? RON or these different technologies that allow for the remote signing or execution of documents, well, there are some caveats there. It is permitted in New Hampshire. It's not permitted in every jurisdiction. Oh, and by the way, it's not permitted by every bank or mortgage company. So you may be in a jurisdiction that allows it, and it might have been your plan to sign your documents in South Korea or whatever country you happen to have moved to or be in, but understand that you might run into a situation where either the title company representing the buyer or the buyer's mortgage company or some other jurisdictional issue might prevent that from happening, so that you may not be permitted to sign those documents easily, conveniently, and remotely in a foreign country as though you were here using a passport and some kind of sort of video recognition. So those kinds of assumptions really shouldn't be made. So if you are selling real estate in New Hampshire or Massachusetts or anywhere in New England, and you don't plan on being present on the day of the closing, you need to make sure that certain arrangements are in place. You should have a power of attorney who can sign documents for you locally. If that's not possible, and it isn't always possible, understand that there are procedures to permit you to sign documents wherever you are. But keep in mind, if you're in Arizona and you're going to sign all of your documents in Arizona, that means that you're going to have to bring all those documents to a notary in Arizona and have them signed before that individual, and then return all of those documents to the title company or the real estate attorney in New Hampshire or Massachusetts. So you'll have to do that. And we've seen situations where sellers find that inconvenient or aggravating. It's usually a lack of knowledge. It's usually just a lack of their expectations not having been properly set. They probably assumed and weren't told otherwise that they could sign the closing documents just as easily as they signed the purchase and sales agreement. which they signed in dot loop electronically, which was basically just press and accept on their phone. You may be able to sign a purchase and sales agreement that way, but you won't be able to close that way, barring some technological or legislative improvements or enhancements. Status quo, where we are today, October 2025, you won't be able to close that way. So keep in mind, again, if you are the seller of real estate and you don't think you're going to be present for your closing, a couple things to keep in mind. You're going to have to sign an original deed. You can't delegate that, but you can delegate everything else to a local power of attorney. That's somebody that's authorized to sign documents for you. If you're in a foreign country, you need to make arrangements to get an appointment with the embassy or with a consular office in advance. And by the way, there are wait times and waiting lists, and we have a government shutdown, which may be impacting services that are provided, certainly at that level at the embassy. So you've got to take all of these things into consideration. If you're selling real estate in New England, but planning on being abroad or in a foreign country or in another part of the United States, you really need to give these issues some consideration. Reach out for information to a real estate attorney, ask your real estate agent. Don't make assumptions though, because closings are very time-sensitive events. So they don't just happen when they happen. We don't do things when we get around to them. They typically have to be done by a deadline, time being of the essence. So all of these deadlines are strict. And signing documents at an embassy may not line up with the closing timetable, which you have agreed to in the signed purchase and sales agreement. So what I see in my role is I see these issues sometimes not being given enough thought at the beginning so that they cause frustration, stress, and inconvenience at the end.